because I have this quote by Dr. Umar, and I'm going to quote that. To the extent they know who you are, the more racist they become, because in studying you, they see your potential. This relates to our conversation about the N-word, because the whole issue of the N-word and the occasion of it relates to the issue of our identity. Who are we? What are we about? How do we identify ourselves? These are important questions. One of the things that I was forced to come to terms with was my own background and my experiences with the word. And in discussing this, I'm not saying that a person actually has to be a witness or a victim of this type of language, because we know that for the most part it's something that's negative and counterproductive. When I was growing up, one of the things I was told when I was very young, before I even had an opportunity to put this information into practice, my uncle told me when I was very young, my Uncle Bill, rest in peace and power, he said, if anybody calls you the N-word, he said, call them hunky. And since I couldn't have been more than 4 or 5 when he told me, I was trying to, I think I heard the word before, didn't really know what it was, but I'm like, oh, okay. This came into play, because as I ended up, we moved from the south side of Chicago to Pontiac, I was in schools that had just recently been integrated. Pontiac was one of the, if not the first, one of the first school systems in the North where the court decided, I think Judge Damon Keith was the one that decided that it had to be integrated in the 70s. And so I was going to school with white kids. It was experience for them. It was experience for me too. And I remember being on a playground in elementary school, and some of them called me that word, and for the life of me, I don't know why they chose to call me that. Because I did have words to return. I could respond, being a verbal person. And I was, even though I was kind of a chunky kid, I was a bigger kid than what they were. And so in addition to me defending myself verbally, I was also defending myself physically. After a while, they stopped doing it. Interestingly enough, the principal there would call me in the office. He never suspended me, so he kind of knew the character of some of these kids called me that. That told me he knew what was going on. But I wasn't one of these people taught to just run home crying, oh, they called me this and that, and like, oh, so we got to sit in the living room and pray for better outcome or whatever. We were told to defend ourselves. Anybody put their hands on you, then you have a right to respond. Anybody say something to you out of the way, you have some words for them. And so I had my own words. So I wasn't one of these people walking around just taking it and accepting it. So that had a very profound impact on me in terms of my understanding of it. I knew it was something negative. I know the whole history of it, and I was taught how to respond. Then years later, I found myself in front of young people as an educator in Detroit, a city with one of the greatest black concentrations of any city outside of Brazil and Africa. So we're dealing with our people, and our people have been, as I discussed before, engineered, have been motivated and encouraged to use this language of advances, have become very comfortable with it. And so now I've got to decide what I'm going to do in terms of language of African American students in an African American language class. What is my stand on it? Because we know in a lot of programs, especially with black kids, we have our educators saying, well, I can't have no control over it. Well, that's how they talk and all those type of things. And initially, as a young educator, I'm not going to lie, there were times where I wanted to express something and profound or dramatic, and the word would come out of my mouth, the kids could relate to it. But then I had to ask myself, are you becoming one of those educators that sounds like some of your brain dead brethren that are black, or some of the whites who are raised as saying, well, that's how they talk, or that's all they know. One of those using that as an excuse to use language that you believe in anyway. And I had to have a come to the creator moment where I said, as a language arts person, as a person that some might see as a pillar of community, as somebody that is quote unquote educated, I have a right and responsibility to promote that which is correct and that which is just. This word should have no presence whatsoever in an academic environment. Really, in my mind, does not have much of productive presence anywhere. And so I decided to ban it from my program as I became more mature as an educator working with people, because I didn't think it was something I needed to promote. It was out there anyway. As I discussed in arts and entertainment, mainly because people outside our culture that owned our creative capacities and abilities, making sure that we use as much as possible. And so I started asking my students. The students would wonder why, and I was always get the narrative, oh, it's just a word. Okay. I started asking the kids, these are high school kids, I'm not dealing with little kids, so they very capable of forming thoughts on their own and having opinions and strong opinions, and we would get into it, and I just loved it too. Because this is where the learning comes. Okay, there's going to be some pushback, and we got to find some happy median, because it's everywhere that the young people are. It's in the music, it's in the language, they're hearing at home a lot of time. Not in every house, I'm not saying universally, but in enough of them to where we got to have a discussion about it. So I got to the point where I started asking the students, sometimes you can make some progress by making statements and taking a stand on things. Sometimes you have to ask questions. And so my questions to young people is, in the classrooms where the teachers allow kids to use that word, what kind of behavior do you observe? To the child, they said that bad behavior, foul behavior, inappropriate behavior. And so I started telling them, I said, if you talk like a slave, you're going to act like a slave. Because that's where it comes from. It comes from us being enslaved. It comes from us having somebody else's culture enforced upon us. It comes from us being denied the right to our land, our way of dress, our language, all of that. And you're going to learn something new. Well, you're not going to call each other Ghanaians or Malians or any of the other things attaching us to land. You're going to be called the N-word. And we're going to remake you into something less than even human. And I'll treat you like that too. And so while other people are allowed to go around and call themselves Italians, Germans, and French, many of us have latched on this thing that this is who we are. This is part of our identity. Why do I say that? Because you hear us using the word when we're happy. That's when we're sad, when I'm angry, when I'm about to put two in your dome, when there's an argument, when there's celebration. It's become an all-encompassing term because many of us have accepted as the totality of our existence. It's the acceptance of us being oppressed as a people. And it's also a means, I think, of self-censorship, because even though we feel uncomfortable saying words like cracker and hunky, because I watch black people's reaction when they hear those words, like, oh, like they jolt, because they don't hear them that much. And you've got this internalized system telling you, hey, that's not appropriate now. But the N-word, that's just fine. It's socially acceptable. If you want to know what society, the values are, look at the things that are punished, look at the things that are allowed. If the N-word really were against the program of the society, then would it be sanctioned? There's a reason why it's not. Why was Michael Jackson forced to take kike out of his music? Is it not because the European Jews dominate the music industry? And some of those, from what I understood, some of those CDs got out, but for the most part, they made sure that the vast majority of them, that word was taken out. He said in one of his songs, kick me, kike me, talk about his treatment by the industry. And at this point, even though he might have gained a status as a Negro they didn't put their hands on, at a certain point they saw that he had gotten control of the catalogs of Elvis Presley. He had gotten control of catalogs of the Beatles, and he had become a certified threat. He's the largest selling artist, I think, in the history of arts and entertainment. And he might have started just then seeing himself as just another N-word. And at that point, like Prince, he decided to kick back. And the way he did it, they found was unacceptable. That's not acceptable. They don't want that out there. They don't mind you calling yourselves that, but they don't want that out there about themselves. And in that vein, I used to tell kids, I said, how you guys adopt, put your arms around each other. This is my aunt. Oh, this is Woods. This is or Bob or two. This is my, we're supposed to laugh. I said, I've lived a long time. I said, you know what? I've never seen a white guy put his arm around another white guy, look at his friend and say, that's my cracker right there. That's my hunky. Why? Because those are not terms of endearment necessarily. And those are terms that we call them. They don't call each other that. Even if a white person's upset with a white person, their system is so based on class they'll say something like, "You're trash." That's a very pejorative term in the white community for a white person to call another white person trash. Those are fighting words. There's a lot of emotion in that. But even saying somebody comes from a trailer at least has a home. A person considers themselves being N-word, where is your home? It's on a plantation. That's where it is. We have to be very careful about our use of the terms as a result. Is this the way we want to be depicted on a world stage? So I realize I've had to come to a median myself because a lot of my friends use it. And I just have said, well, please don't do it around, I hate to admit this, other people. You know, it's unfortunate, in my opinion, we got so comfortable with it, but I wouldn't have too many people I could talk to because everybody's on board that it's something that they got to say. But I'm asking them to think about, are you not identifying with the oppressor? Do you not think that somehow you think that there's certain behaviors you have where you're going to be them, you psychologically identify with them? You will never be them. There's no white woman you can be allowed to date. There's no car you can be allowed to drive. There's no neighborhood you can live in. And there's no calling yourself or each other that you're going to turn into them. You still don't own the plantation. And if you're using that word, you're still on the plantation. And so a lot of our people are really Europeans and blackface. We're not even aware of how we internalize their values. So we walk around saying stuff like, well, that's what they call us. That's what they think of us. Do I really need for you to tell me that? I know how white folk think of me. I know that. The question is, what do I think of them? Because just because you think of me, that it's like sometimes there's people are insulted, and sometimes there are times you exercise restraint in the face of attacks and assaults, and you have to exercise some self-discipline. Somebody will walk up to you, Baba, why did you respond like that? And you might say, it's not what they call you, it's what you respond to. And I didn't respond to that because they weren't talking to me. That's one way of handling that. And that's kind of a way of looking at it. That's not my identity. Others can accept it for that and say it's universal, or that's what they think of. Okay, fine. This is what I think of them. Okay, how about that? So we're going to have to kind of examine that. It's a form of self-censorship. We know that it won't be sanctioned. We felt comfortable with it. Like I said, it describes the full range of emotions of us as human beings. I think some of us even use it when we're quote-unquote making love. Maybe then we kind of identify ourselves as the person in power because somehow we think we're the white man because we're using the word. When really, like I say, it puts us right back on that mental, that plantation, and makes us kind of Europeans in blackface. So the issue is one of identity. And I've even had people say, well, I've had sisters say that the N-word doesn't bother me, but don't call me a B. That's what our women have said. You can say the N-word all day, just I don't want to hear a B. And I had to explain to them, I said, the B word is we're using English, so that's the language imposed upon us. That's the one we're using to communicate. That's how I'm speaking to you right now. The B word is a word the white man created for his dogs and his women. He's talking about them. Now, as we learn the language, of course, many of us have accepted that as relating to our women like that. So the B word mainly is for the women. I said the N word is worse because it's talking about all of us. As a matter of fact, on the plantation, you might have been an NB. You might get both of them. But the N is worse because it's universal. So why would you, and I guess that's them parsing like, I'll just, I don't want the B word because I think it's a women thing. You get emotional, but you're not the men and everybody else. It's okay for that to go on. You can call them that, and that's acceptable. Neither one really acceptable. One is clearly worse than the other. So, because by definition, it's the N word is for us. There's no other group of people that they made that for. Even when we call white people that, they're sometimes confused. I have a friend that works in a plant right down the street here. And there's a white guy, he said, that's pretty cool with all the brothers there. And to show our level of ignorance when we're around them, he told me the white guy, his wife works there too, so they're there together. You spend a lot of time when you're working in the factory, you spend a lot of time around these folks, and you want to make sure if possible you get along, because the way that they handle things in the plant, that's not the way they handle things in corporate sometimes. you can get hands put on you. All conflicts there are not handled by, trying to be the bigger person, commenting and backing down. There's some serious stuff going on in there. And my friend told me, the white guy had to tell some blacks in there, please don't use that word around me. For the white man to have to tell you as a black person that you should not use that word around, that shows how bad it is. They got to tell you to do that. And the only thing I can think of, I don't know the guy, is sometimes they might be thinking that may trigger them saying it. And they know once they say it, no matter how much we might find acceptable to call each other that, many of us are going to have a reaction coming from them. But as I explained before, it does. The real power's behind the throne. It does kind of come. Who do you think's behind the cameras? Who do you think's finances the movies? Who do you think makes all these portrayals of us and controls all the narrative and puts all that stuff in the script? But we're at a point where we defend the usage of it. There was a player that's going to be in the Hall of Fame pretty soon. I'm not going to mention the name of NFL, one of the greatest safeties to play in NFL history. And the National Football League started making rules about appropriate behavior. And one of the things they said was, I think unsportsmanlike conduct could be even using the N-word. And this brother said, it's like they're trying to censor us. And I'm sitting up here thinking, yeah, that's the man coming down on you trying to tell you what to say. But why do you want to say that anyway? Why are you so motivated to defend the use of that word? That's what gets me. You defend the plantation, but maybe you don't really see it that way because you got enough money to where you don't live where you were living. And so a lot of our popular artists in our popular culture, some of the rappers, some of the other artists, they don't live in the filth that they've created because they've moved away from a lot of that. And some of them live in Utah, other places, so on and so forth. Well, they're still the end to the white people, but the conditions in the community that keep it real and all this and that, they don't want to live in that. They don't really want to be incarcerated. A lot of them, if you bought that life is horrible, if you act like you bought that life is horrible, that's something to get away from. And the N-word is all part of the identification and acceptance and glorification. Like Chuck D said, we praise projects and diss pyramids. We hate our own culture. So again, is this how we want to be portrayed on a world stage? And the ones that we say, well, those of us, last thing, that will defend this on the bedrock of they're just making money. Or it's just a job. Just like people, it's just a word. But they get offended when we say crack or hunky. But the N-word is just word accepted. I go back to my thing about your spirituality. And I'm not talking about necessarily religious system because I'm going to base you on what you practice. If you are a person of spirit, if you're a person that has some type of morals, because they're afraid of us having morals now, there must be some things that you will not do for money. Thank you.